it's hard to talk about that, but people are curious and they want to know, and that's just normal. Hello, it's Sonia here with The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I usually talk about knitting and crocheting. I do tutorials about knitting and crocheting, mostly about crocheting, Tunisian crochet. I do patterns, anything that's, yarn related and that kind of stuff. But I thought today's video I would do more of a lifestyle type video, which I don't usually do a lot of these, but occasionally I have done them in the past. So a lot of you know, and if you're new to me, if you've never seen my channel before, I am a widow. So I thought I would talk about being a widow. A lot of people are interested, want to know, and I thought, why don't we talk about it? I'm at a good frame of mind, I guess is a good way of putting it, to talk about it. And hopefully, if there are other widows out there who are looking for support, encouragement, wondering if some of your feelings are strange or weird, or if you're normal, because, this grief journey is, unknown to a lot of us. I'll share about what it's like for me and hopefully encourage others out there. Or if you know somebody that is a widower or a widow, that you can be an encouragement and support to them as well. So if you see me looking down, I have some notes here to I can be all over the place. So I'm trying to organize my thoughts a little bit here. So a lot of people want to know how long have I been a widow? So I have been a widow for almost a year and a half. My husband passed away March of 2021. And another question is, a lot of people want to know, how did he die? And a lot of them ask me, did he die of COVID? And no, he did not. Not to take away from the tragedies that have happened with COVID, but there are other things in this world that you can die from. And he passed away from complications due to type 2 diabetes. So any of you that know somebody with type 2 diabetes or have it yourself, please take care of yourself or encourage them to take care of themselves, because you can get away with not taking care of yourself for a while when you are first diagnosed especially, but it will catch up to you and you can die from it. You can also live a long life with it as well if you take care of yourself. And unfortunately, my husband, he would get a little cavalier with his health. It was a constant roller coaster. He was probably diagnosed about 10 years prior before he died from it, and it was a constant battle. He would do really well with taking his medications and checking his sugars or exercising, and then he would just completely fall off the wagon, and then his health would take a downturn. And I'm trying to think, about 6 years before he died is when things started creeping up with different complications. He ultimately died from an infection, which you can be prone to when you have type 2 diabetes, because your body, it affects your immune system, can't fight infection as well. And he had an infection in his foot, and that can be a really big issue for diabetes. So he started with his first infection probably about 6 years prior to when he passed away, and it was actually in his arm, and he was in the hospital for a week for that. About 4 years later, we had another major scare where he became dehydrated and he had done a lot of yard work outside, so he had overheated, he had forgotten to take his medicine, and there was just a whole bunch of things going on in his body, and it got to the point where his kidneys were shutting down. We almost lost him then, and so he was in the ICU for a few days because of that. It was just a whole bunch of things that went wrong at the same time with that episode. And fortunately, we thought he was going to need to go on dialysis at that point because we weren't sure if there was kidney damage. But praise the Lord, so you might hear me talk about God a little bit. I am a Christian, in case anybody was wondering. Anyway, let's keep going. So anyway, he did pull through from that one. And as I said before, praise the Lord, his kidneys were actually fine. so he never needed to do the dialysis, which was, you know, a big, wonderful thing. So then after that, that was a huge scare. So he started taking better care of himself, eating better, being mindful about his sugars, or checking his sugars, taking his medicine, because sometimes he would forget to take his medicine, or he would just completely go off the wagon. Like, I would try to cook and do the meals as best as I could for him. You know, I did a lot of research on type 2 diabetes, so, you know, I learned about different foods and how it spikes your sugars and all that stuff. But the problem was, if he's not going to eat it, it's not going to help him. And it got to the point, like, I would be making all these foods, and then he'd go to McDonald's, or he would go get pizza or whatever, and it just kind of would derail everything that I was trying to do to be helpful. And so I kind of learned that this was his disease and he needed to learn to own it, which can be a really hard thing, because, you know, you just want that person that you love and care about to want to take care of themselves, and when they don't, it can be really hard to be on the sidelines. So we went through a lot of that. But after that scare, he did a lot better. Sorry, I just realized I didn't have my light on, so I probably was looking a little dark, and I've got the dark background. So hopefully it's a little better. And I'm wearing a dark shirt. Didn't really plan this out very well, but all right, well, let's keep going. So yeah, so then he was doing better, and then it would have been during 2020 when everything was going crazy with COVID. He had gotten another infection, and it was in his abdomen, and he had an infected mass that was probably like this big. It was like a softball size, and at first he didn't tell me about it, but I would kind of see him wincing, and then I like kind of could see it, and I was just like, what is going on? What is that? And he's like, you're gonna be mad at me. And I'm like, what? And he's, you know, he's like, I'm not sure. And I'm just like, you need to go to the doctor, you need to get it checked out. And so he finally did, and it was another infection that took months and months and months to get better. It really did. And that's the problem with uncontrolled type 2 diabetes. Your body's just not able to fight off infection as well. So he battled that infection, I would say, at least, so probably a good 6 months. But he did get better from it. And then things were going, you know, he was doing better again. And then he got a cut on his foot. And that was probably, I'm thinking probably October, November of 2020. And I do remember when he cut his foot, and I kind of freaked out. And he was like, you're being dramatic, you're overreacting. And I was like, you need to go to see the doctor. You need, you know, because, you know, that's always like diabetes 101. They check your feet because you can get neuropathy. You don't always have feeling in your feet. So you don't always know if there's something going on down there. So the feet are always a big deal when you have type 2 diabetes. And we do have a family member who lost part of their leg. Actually, we have two family members. One who lost part of their leg from the knee down because of an infection in their foot, and then another one that has had part of their foot removed because of an infection in their foot. So it's a thing. It's very serious. But he was just like putting the Neosporin on it. Oh, it's okay. It'll be fine. Whatever. And it was hard. It's, you know, you can't make people do things. And, you know, I encouraged him to go. He didn't want to go. But eventually around Christmas time, it started to really hurt him, because up until that point it hadn't been hurting him that much. But then he was like, this isn't getting better. I guess I really should see a doctor about it. So finally we were like, yes, he's going. So he went, spent like a night in the hospital. They did, you know, heavy antibiotics, sent him home, and we had Christmas, and it was our last Christmas together. It was very, very nice, actually, and he seemed to be doing better. Towards the end of January, the infection just started getting worse. And the beginning of February, it was getting to the point he was in a lot of pain. And he hadn't been in that much pain before, but was in severe pain, and he was seeing the doctor, and they were just kind of monkeying around about it, just kind of throwing pills at him, and it just wasn't getting better. And I'm like, look, you need to just go to the hospital and be like, look, you need to do something about this, because that's what we had to do before. And I don't want to be negative about the medical system, but he has prior history, and that was frustrating because he had had 2 other infections, and both times he had to be hospitalized. So obviously there's a history of regular antibiotics just not working and doing their thing, and we need to do a more aggressive treatment. And that was frustrating that they were just like, oh no, try this antibiotic, try that one, and it wasn't getting better. I mean, this had been going on. When he finally started getting it looked at in like November, December, and here we are the end of January, beginning of February, and it's getting worse. So got to the point where he just called me at work and he's like, I'm going straight to the hospital afterwards. He was in so much pain, and I was like, yes, finally. So we went to the hospital. He was in the ER, he was in the hospital for over 2 weeks in February with the infection. He had a hole in his foot this long. It was about 6 inches long, and he was sent home with the hole in his foot, and we had to pack the wound ourselves. And I was like, what? I'm not a doctor. We did not get very good instruction with that. So my one daughter wants to be a doctor, and she was like, I will pack Dad's foot. I'll do it. You know, she took one for the team. I really appreciate her doing that. And she did an amazing job taking care of her dad. Things were getting better. He was getting better. This would have been early March of 2021. He died towards the end, and things were on the upswing. He was doing good. And then all of a sudden, the final weekend, I remember he, you know, hindsight's 2020, he was talking about a little bit of just shortness of breath. But I was like, well, you've been sitting for so long, because when he came home, he was not allowed to do anything. He had to literally be in a chair or in bed with his foot propped up so that it could heal, because they didn't want any type of pressure on it, because then that could like reintroduce infection. And he had a PICC line to his heart. He had, it was an IV in his arm, and it went straight to his heart. So we'd have to hook up his medication, and then it would go to his heart. You know, and that's how the go right into his bloodstream. So he had that, but he had visiting nurses, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, and they had just been there. Everything checked out fine. So, you know, we attribute it to, oh, you've been sitting for so long, as you know, and you sit too long, you know, you get tired. Your body, you know, the muscles break down, things like that. So it just didn't seem that out of the ordinary to be like, well, yeah, you're a little tired because you haven't been doing anything. He woke up on a Monday, and I was downstairs with my daughter, and he started yelling for me, and we found him on the floor, and I could tell immediately, you know, something was seriously, seriously wrong. And so we called 911. They took him off. I was not allowed to go with, and once then they called me about an hour later, and I had to go to the hospital, and then they told me that he had died in the hospital. So that's the story of how he died, you know, and it's hard to talk about that, but, you know, people are curious and they want to know, and that's just normal when something like this happens. My husband and I, we were married for 27 years, and he was 53 when he died. So, you know, rather young. And so I wasn't expecting it, but looking back, hindsight is 2020, as they say. And I do remember thinking, as we were having these episodes, and I do remember thinking the last one to myself, like, how much more can his body take? You know, I didn't want him to die, but I just, you know, just looking at it logically, you can't just keep having these major scares and think that you're going to be okay. It just, you know, it catches up to you after a while, and that's pretty much what happened. Going to the hospital, I didn't think that he was going to die, of course, but when they told me, you know, I was kind of like numb, and it was just sort of like the world is kind of at a standstill, but yet it's spinning at the same time. It's very kind of surreal, and just like, how is this happening? How is this my life? And how am I going to tell my kids? That was probably the first thoughts that popped into my head, is how am I going to tell them about their dad? And that was really hard. That was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, aside from hearing about, you know, that we had lost him. But telling my kids that was really hard. But, you know, we do have a support system, and that day everybody, you know, came to be with us, which, my family, which really surprised me about all the people that came out, because I don't live that close to my family. Not that I have a wonderful family, but we're over an hour away, so they just literally dropped everything and came to be with us, which I'm really thankful for. So that was very hard. All the calls. I mean, I'm not a very popular person. I'm not a big phone person, so my phone never rang so much in its life, and that kind of got a little annoying. But people were, they just wanted to check up on us, and I do appreciate that. And there's just so much that goes on when somebody dies. So things that people don't know when somebody becomes a widow or a widower is the amount of paperwork that you have to do, the amount of things that you have to do. It's hard enough you lose your loved one, and then you have this laundry list of things that you need to take care of. And a lot of people don't really understand that or really know that unless they've been through it. That was hard. That first week was just autopilot, probably. I'm planning a funeral. I'm trying to take care of my children who were older at the time, but still, tremendous loss. Dealing with the school, had two in high school at that point, so dealing with them. But I have to say, they were amazing. My kids' school, we've only been in this district, it's now 3 years, and so thankful, because we had just moved to where we live. We had only lived there a year and a half, and dealing with COVID, so we didn't really get to know a lot of people in the district, but they stepped up, I've got to say. So really, I'm thankful for that. My church was amazing, and we were newer to the church, didn't really know a lot of people, but I had become friends with this one woman, and I was helping out at a Bible study. I was supposed to be a helper, ended up helping me, and I'm so thankful that I met her, because she helped me get in touch with the pastor. The pastor then helped me find the good funeral home, and then helped me find, we chose to bury my husband. So it was all these things, this chain of events that was happening, but it happened fairly smoothly, which I'm extremely thankful for, because I just was, I didn't know how to do all these things. So I'm so thankful that I feel like God put certain people in my life at that time to kind of just help me get this stuff done, because it had to get done. And so we were able to have a really nice service for my husband, which I'm really thankful for, because he loved people and he loved big, large gatherings, and that's what I wanted. And that was hard because it was still major COVID, so we couldn't have food or anything like that. But our church is large, so people could social distance, wear masks if they wanted to, not masks. And so I was so thankful that I could honor my husband that way. But I have to say, funeral home that I used, amazing. Never thought I would be saying that about a funeral home, but they were amazing. They did everything for me. They wrote the obituary. Flowers, picked them all out. They took care of everything. I did not have to think about it. Of course, we had to pay for that. Of course, all those little nitty-gritty things of having to plan, if you can find a place that does those things for you, to take something off the table. I always say, if you're super stressed out, if there's something that you can remove, because you can't always remove every stress in your life, of course, but if there's something that you can, do it. Can't remove all stress, but little things, if at the end of the day, if it's not that important, just let it go. So that's something that I'm still learning to do. So yeah, back to the paperwork. Yes, so much paperwork. Maybe not so much. I had a family member pass away a couple months after my husband, and they were much older. He was 89. So his widow, she didn't have as much paperwork, but because my husband was younger, tons upon tons of paperwork. It was just so overwhelming. So what I learned to do, and I suggest this for anyone that is in this position, is make a list, either on your computer, your phone. I'm old school. See here, I have a tablet. So I wrote down everything that I needed to do, and I would pick one thing a day and do it, because trying to do everything at once was just, forget it. I was, they talk about widow fog, widow brain. It is a thing, I think, because your body is just going through such a stress and especially if it's kind of unexpected, that you're thrown into this whole new life, and your life is like completely foreign. And that's how I felt. Like everything was just so different and not normal. And I kind of felt like in some ways I was feeling my way through the dark, because everything familiar was gone. And I'm just chucked into this new world that I had to learn to figure out. So yeah, I learned just do one thing a day. I also learned you don't have to take care of everything right away. And I have talked to other widows since, and I've told them, you do not have to do everything right away. So that is my advice to you. Yes, some things have to get taken care of, like, the funeral, and however, your loved one chooses to be buried, cremated, however that, whatever their decision or your decision, you got to take care of those things. They have to get taken care of. Obviously if you have children, you got to take care of them, all that kind of little nitty gritty stuff. So, that stuff I learned, obviously to take care of. Bills have to get paid. Sorry I ran out of camera space. So I'm just saying how some things, yes, you have to take care of, but there are other things that, can wait a little bit. And so I did learn with some of that, dealing with some of the financial stuff. I was blessed to, my husband, we had life insurance. And I do encourage, if any of you are watching this, that is just watching it to watch it. If you do not have life insurance, if you're married or a single parent, whatever, I highly suggest that you get life insurance, because you just never know. I am living proof. I was only 48 years old when my husband died, and you don't think about that. Or and I've heard stories, people who are younger. I mean, unfortunately, death can happen at any time. And so highly recommend life insurance. That really has helped us out so much, because that's a question I get a lot, is, are you working? What are you doing? How are you surviving? And so fortunately, I'm living off of life insurance right now. It's not going to last me forever. It's not millions of dollars. So, put that out there. It's not. But I'm okay right now. And there are also services available to you that I've learned. I didn't know that I qualified for some Social Security. So that is something to look into if, heaven forbid, you find yourself in a similar situation. Look and see what you qualify for. And I'm not a big proponent of, living off the government by any means, but, if you have been working all this time and you're putting into it and you do qualify for that, then definitely look into that. So that is something that has helped us out. Again, not going to last forever. So I'm, just going to trust that the Lord is going to take care of me and guide my steps. One of my favorite verses is that His word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And how I view that is, we want to know how the path is, like, especially me. I'm a big planner. Plans usually never work out, but I keep trying. So, I wish that my path was completely illuminated and I knew exactly where I was going. But, sometimes the path kind of twists and turns. Sometimes it's dark. And so the lamp at my feet, I can see right in front of me where I'm going. But I can't see, 50 feet ahead of me. But as I go along, the path gets illuminated. So that's kind of what I've been living by, and I just trust that. So I'm getting a little emotional about it, which I'm not sure why. But I just trust that it's going to work out somehow. He's gotten me this far. I'm able to stay in my house, which is amazing, because I know some people, they've had to move, and that's another bit of advice. Don't make any major life changes right away, because you are in such a state of, I'm thinking like fog is one of the best ways to describe it, because it's just, like I said, everything's foreign and things are coming at you, but yet your brain is like trying to catch up to everything that's happening to you, and you're grieving, and then if you have your children, and it's just like, especially if you're a widow and you have kids, I feel like you get pulled in all these different directions because you need to take care of your kids, you need to take care of yourself, and now I have to take care of my house by myself. And they help me, but my husband, when he was here, would help pick up the slack, and so it's a lot, and you're just kind of like in a fog. So if you don't have to make major decisions, yeah. Now of course, me being me, I got a dog. Never was a dog owner. My husband hated dogs, but I just felt like when my husband died that my kids needed a dog. I don't know. It was one of the first thoughts that popped into my head was, how am I going to tell my kids? And then I thought, I have to get my kids a dog. Maybe it was a God thing. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But we got a dog in May. So like 2 months after he died, we get a dog. And not only do we get a dog, we get a puppy. Never had a puppy before except when I was a small kid and I grew up on a farm and the dogs were outside, and so puppy training wasn't really a thing back then. So yes, completely newbie dog owners. We get a husky puppy too, so really crazy. But he's been a big blessing. A lot of work, but my kids we all help take care of this dog because he's now over a year old, and we had to have some family discussions about if we're going to keep this dog. Mom's not doing all the work because mom already has a lot of work to do. I do not work outside of the home right now, and I don't have to, but I do work. I think people think, oh, your kids are older, you don't have to work. You're just like making videos all day or crocheting all day. I wish, but I'm not. Now that I am a single parent, I'm trying to help my kids. Taking care of my house is a lot. Yard work. I have over half an acre of yard. I love doing yard work. I really do. But my husband and I used to do it together. Now it's just mostly on me. It's a lot of work. But it is what it is. I do it, and I do kind of enjoy it. But sometimes it would be nice to have somebody to kind of do that and keeping the house going. All the school stuff. And now I just have one in high school. I have two in college. Even though they're like baby adults, as I call them, they still need me to kind of help guide them. My youngest one is involved in a lot of things. If I was working, she would not be able to do stuff with school, and she really, the kind of career she wants to get into, she kind of has to get her resume ready now so that she will get accepted. So we really need to kind of set her up for success. So I am thankful that I do not have to work outside of the home right now. I do get a little bit of stuff from my crocheting, income from that, which I'm thankful for. Maybe it'll grow into more. I would love that to be a thing, to just work at home, but I don't know. It's in the Lord's hands. Just doing the best that I can. And I don't have, as I said before, my family's not close by, so I don't have that support system close by to help pick up the slack with my daughter, picking her up from school, all that stuff. It's all on me. I mean, her siblings can help out a little bit, but they're in college, so they need to do their thing. So yeah, there's not enough hours of the day, I find, and that's what a lot of, I think, widow with children probably find that too. Like, you just get double the load, and I don't know how some do it that do work outside of the home. I mean, they're, amazing if they, because I just don't know if I could do it right now. I mean, who's to say I might, have to get a job later, but right now I'm okay. I'm very good at living on less. Had to do it many years. We had a lot of lean times in our marriage, so I'm really good at saving money. I'm really good at being thrifty. Really good at making a penny squeak. I have Mennonite roots. So anybody that knows about Mennonites, they're known for being stingy, for being thrifty. So I think I got that gene because I'm pretty good at it. I get tired of like, okay, I only have this much, and okay, we only can have this much for food or whatever. But at least I can do it. I know how to do it, and like I said, Lord's been good to me. He really has. He's helped take care of me, and I can't complain about that. Some people want to know, like, what have we done to kind of go through the grieving process. So I got a dog. which has, I think, really helped a lot. He's been a good, he's made us laugh. He's made me cry, but he's been mostly a big source of joy. So I think I say it's the best or worst decision that I made, but I think for the most part it's the best decision. And it's helped us come together as a family because I said this is our dog and I'm not just doing all the work. So that is one thing that I feel like has helped us. Don't know if that's right for everybody, but it's been a positive for the most part for us. Another thing, we did do counseling. I thought that it was important for all of my kids to get into counseling because, you know, this was a very traumatic event in their lives and I just want them to be okay. You know, not that you're ever really okay, but I've learned that it's not as sharp as it was. Like you're always going to carry that grief, but it softens is I guess a way that I describe it. It's not always that sharp, intense like when it first happened, but there'll, you know, be days where it just kind of hits you. But the counseling has really helped, you know, to talk about that and to process, you know, everything that we've been through. We're no longer in counseling. One of my children might want to go back into it, you know, and that's okay. You know, that's, you know, everybody's different in how they are dealing with this journey because it is a journey. And everybody's journey is different. I also have done a grief share. So I do recommend grief share. They're mostly through churches. I know there are other grief programs. There was one that they gave me information about from the hospital. So that might be something to look into. You know, different hospitals might have something. I chose not to do that one because at the time, it was all on Zoom, and I'm not a big Zoom kind of person, and I just felt like it was a little impersonal, and when you're dealing with something as major as, you know, like the death of your husband or your father, I was just like, to me, I felt like the Zoom was just a little impersonal, but, you know, for somebody else, that might be fine, so it just depends on, you know, what works best for you. So I preferred in person, so counseling was in person. And the grief share that I went to was also in person. I'm now doing another grief share. I just felt like I needed to do another one because the first one was not even 5 months after my husband died. And I was still just in this vortex of like all this stuff going on. And I didn't really feel like I had a lot of time to process what was happening to me. And so now it's been a year and a half. I can, you know, have a little bit more time to kind of process, I guess, all the stuff that I've been through and really focus on, you know, some of this stuff. I was just trying to like check off boxes and do the right thing the first time, you know, oh, go to grief share. And not to say that it was a bad thing at all. It wasn't. It was very positive. I met some amazing people and we've kind of formed our own, I call us like, we're like our own little motley crew. And we've done picnics together and dinners and things. And it's nice to do that. And that is something I do recommend because when you are grieving, you can get just trapped in your grief. Like it just can suck you down into this hole until you feel like that's kind of all you are and that you're not a person anymore. I don't know if that makes any sense. So for people out there that are grieving their loss, sometimes you need a break. And so what I found, it was really nice to do those activities with other people that are grieving because we got to show them that we're not just our grief. You know, we had fun and we laughed and we even could talk about some of the things that we've been through since our loss. You know, like one gentleman, you know, he lost his wife and we're just laughing about the massive amounts of paperwork. And he was like, I thought I was the only one. And I'm like, I know. And so that was, you know, nice. We could just laugh about it and roll our eyes because it can just be crazy. Fortunately, we had, my husband's estate is pretty basic. So we did not have a will. Everything was jointly owned. So everything that was his was mine. So I didn't really have anything weird or crazy. That's another thing. I am making a will now because it's important, and we never really thought about it before. So that's life insurance, make a will. I'll probably do a whole video on that of like before you become a widow, which sounds a little morbid, or a widower, but unfortunately, these are things that you really should think about. Not that you need to dwell on it all the time, but just if you can make it a little easier. I mean, and hopefully most of you will live to be in your 80s or 90s, and then if you have all that stuff set up, it's just so simple for your loved ones. As I'm getting all over the place again, but when you are grieving, it is okay to have fun sometimes. Like, that's something that I've learning. You don't have to constantly wear your grief like it's a comfortable old sweater all the time. Like, it's okay to kind of take it off and just be a person that isn't sad all the time. Because I know, like, my one kid, he was just like, I'm just tired of being sad all the time. And I felt that hard, because sometimes you just get tired of being sad all the time, and that's okay. And it's okay to just want to have fun and laugh. And so that was really nice with the grief share. So that's something I do recommend. So it is nice when you talk with others to be like, oh, all right, I am normal, I am okay. And we're all individuals, and we all process things differently. Now, there are some things to look for that, aren't normal, which we do go through in grief share, which is nice to know. Like, if you just can't ever really function, or you're just like beyond obsessing about your loss. I mean, of course you're going to obsess, but some people, like, they just get so deep within, and then they might be someone that needs a little bit of extra help, some professional help to kind of help them, because you do have to get back into life. And that's one thing I've learned. Life doesn't stop. You feel like it has. When you suffer something like that, you feel like everything has just stopped, but it hasn't. You have to figure out a way to move on. And a lot of people would say that to me, like, how can you do XYZ? And I'm just like, well, I have bills to pay, I have a house to take care of, I have my kids to take care of. They need to eat, they needed to go back to school. They took 2 weeks off of school, and if they needed more time, they would have. But as I told them, life doesn't stop. We have to find a way to go forward in life. And their dad would have wanted them to. They went back, and as I said before, his school was amazing. They, if the kids needed a break, like, they were allowed to leave the classroom. They were very gentle with them, extensions on assignments. Like, my son, almost didn't graduate. It was his senior year, and he's usually a really good student, but it got rough. And I just was like, whatever it takes, get him graduated. And his guidance counselor was like, don't worry, he will. I know he's a good student. He's going through a hard time. We're going to get him there. And he did. And I'm so thankful that they, worked with him, and we got to celebrate his graduation. Sucked because his dad wasn't there, but, we got to celebrate that milestone. Yeah, that's one thing. You have to find a way to move forward. But as I said, you don't have to do everything at once, and be okay with yourself. Like, you're just, like, sometimes it just feels like a monkey on your back, and like you're just dragging, or an anchor. Maybe that's a better way of describing it. Like, I'll feel like I have this anchor behind me, and things that were a real lot easier to do or harder to do now takes me longer, or I just don't feel like doing them. And I've learned that, that's okay. If I need a down day, then do a down day. It's, just to be on the couch. But I'm learning to not stay there, because it can be really easy to get stuck in a rut, and that's not good either. But if you can accomplish one thing, especially in the beginning of, like, if you have a loss and you're really struggling to just get back into life, if you can do one thing that day, that's a win. Even if that one thing is you got a shower, good for you. And I don't mean that to be like teasing or making fun, like, seriously, and then build on that. Like, okay, I got my shower, and then maybe the next day, I'm going to make dinner. That was a hard thing for me, like food, making dinner. Like, so much revolved around my husband and his illness. So, like, food was, it's still a struggle, because all of my meals, everything was focused on his illness and what to make. And now, and he was a big man, so he ate a lot too. So like figuring out what to buy now, different meals, you know, we still want to be healthy, but it doesn't have to revolve around that. So it's like I have to kind of rethink how I'm making food. And some days I just don't feel like it. And it's also harder now because my kids are older and they're working different hours and we're not all home. And so sometimes 3 of us are here, or 4 of us, or just 2 of us, or just me. So that's been a big challenge. But you know, I'm trying to do the best I can. So yeah, be gentle with yourself. It takes time to figure out your new life, and I'm still figuring it out. I don't know if I'll ever figure it out, but you know, I'm still figuring it out. I feel like my life is a big void, especially when he first died. It was just, you know, you don't know how the future is going to go, but when you've been married a long time, you think you're going to grow old together, and then you're going to be empty nesters, and hopefully, you know, maybe have grandkids or whatever, and now that's all different. So to me, it was like this big void of, I don't know. I still kind of feel like that. It's still, you know, because what I thought was going to be is no more, and now I don't know. So some people want to know, would I ever date or get married again? And yes, I would. I'm not ready yet. It's only been a year and a half for me, and I just feel like I'm not quite there yet, but maybe around the 2-year mark I'll be ready, because I definitely would like to be married again. I was married for 27 years, and not that my life was completely sunshine and roses, because we did have a lot of tough times during our marriage, but all in all, I did really like being married. I liked being part of a team, not be lonely, have those inside jokes, you know, holding hands, all that stuff that, you know, no matter what, that person is there, that is in your corner. And I do really miss that a lot. I really don't like being alone. I mean, I'm okay. I'm doing fine. I'm not like I'm desperate, you know, oh, I have to find a man or anything like that, because, you know, I don't. But you know, I thinking about, you know, let's say if the Lord, you know, blesses me for 20, 30 years, do I want to spend those 20, 30 years, you know, just being a single lady? No, I don't. To me, it's kind of depressing. But if that's, you know, what he has for me, then I'm sure I'll be okay. But no, I'd prefer to be married again. But he'll have to be pretty special, and I'm not quite sure how to go about that, because it's a whole new world out there. I haven't dated in 30 years plus. So yeah, it's a lot different than it was back then, I'll tell you what. You know, I guess a lot of it is online stuff, which, you know, can be quite scary. But I do know people that have found, you know, wonderful husband or wives online, and, you know, it can happen. So I don't know if that's an avenue that I would pursue. I mean, I'd prefer to just meet somebody the old-fashioned way. I met my husband actually through a Bible study, and I do attend Bible study occasionally. Usually the ones I go to are women's Bible studies. So maybe I need to go to a mixed Bible study. I don't know. But, you know, I guess when it's the right time, then hopefully I would meet somebody. And, you know, of course, there's criteria. I wouldn't just be, you know, any old person. And they have to love God like I do. You know, they'd have to like my kids, and my kids would have to like them. And also the dog. The dog doesn't like them, you know, then to me that's a little bit of a red flag. So, you know, but yeah, that is something that I would hope to do in the future. But as I said, right now, I'm not quite ready for that yet. But I'm getting more ready, and I know that my husband, he did used to tell me, even when we were newly married, and it used to irritate me so much. He would always, I think he just kind of knew that he probably would go before I would. And he would always tell me that he would want me to find somebody else. And I would get so mad at him when he would say that, because I'd be like, don't talk like that. I don't want to hear that. But, you know, he would, and he would tell me that. So maybe, you know, talked about it for a reason. I don't know. Another thing that people have said is the wedding rings. So I did stop wearing my wedding ring. So here, bare hand. I stopped wearing it. I guess it was a little over a year, and I just felt like it was time to take them off. So I have decided to, I wear the wedding band on my right hand, which partly because I've always loved my wedding band, and my engagement ring, I am saving that for one of my kids, you know, for my son. He probably won't be able to, if he ever gets married, give it to his fiance, because my fingers are ridiculously tiny. It's a 4.5. Like, nobody has fingers that small, but I do. So, but he could use the diamond for something else, you know, whatever he wants to do with it. But that's for him. And so, but I'm wearing the wedding band on my right hand because I have always loved this ring, and, you know, and it's always going to be special to me. And so, yeah, that was just a choice that I made. But, you know, some women choose, or men choose, to leave their rings on, and that's okay too. Everybody's different, and, you know, you do what's right for you. But I just felt like it was just right for me. So that's all I have for you today about being a widow. I guess it's kind of all over the place, and, you know, maybe I'll do some more videos on this, I'm not sure. And I'll have to condense this because it's been super long. And but I do appreciate you listening. And normally I post things about crocheting and all that. It's not going to become a widow channel at all. I'm just, you know, I just thought this might be helpful for somebody, you know, if they're in a similar situation, and encouraging, and, you know, that you can, you know, I still have a life to live, even though, you know, my husband's not here anymore. I still have to find a way to you know, live my life and still want to honor him. And, you know, hopefully, you know, the Lord has a lot of good things left in store for me. You know, we'll see how that goes. But, you know, and just acknowledging the good things that I do have and being thankful for them, because I do have a lot of blessings in my life, and I'm really fortunate, and I really am thankful for them. And I am thankful that, you know, I had that time with my husband. I appreciate all of you that have watched, and I appreciate everyone that has supported me during this time. And thank you so much for watching.